The Labours of Heracles. The most famous of all the heroes of ancient Greece was Heracles. The Romans called him Hercules. Heracles was born in Greece. His parents were King Amphitryon and Alcmene, but the story says that his real father was Zeus, king of the gods. Hera, Zeus's wife, was angry and jealous because Zeus loved Alcmene, and this made her hate Heracles. When he was still only a baby, she came down from Olympus and placed 2 snakes beside him in his cradle, but Heracles seized a snake in each hand and quickly crushed the terrible creatures. As Heracles grew up, his great strength and courage became famous all over Greece. He married, and his wife bore children, whom he loved dearly. It seems that Hera must have forgotten her hatred of him. But the immortal gods who lived on Mount Olympus never forgot their love or hatred of men. Hera now struck a dreadful blow at Heracles. One night, when he lay asleep in his palace, she drove him into a fit of madness. As in a dream, he thought his enemies were attacking him. Seizing his club, he lashed out until all had been killed. When the fit passed, he saw the horrible truth. He had killed his own wife and children. Not knowing that this was Hera's terrible punishment, Heracles was appalled at what he had done. How could he ever escape from his guilt? He went to the temple of Apollo at Delphi and asked for help. A voice spoke to him out of the darkness of the temple. "You will be freed from your guilt only when you have served King Eurystheus for 12 years. Do everything that he asks." So Heracles came before King Eurystheus. "I have come," he said, "to serve you for 12 years. It is the wish of the gods that I do everything you ask." Eurystheus was a cruel and greedy king. He hated Heracles because he was so strong and famous. Now he seemed to have a chance to send him to his death. "Your first task," he said with a grim smile, "shall be to kill the lion and Nemean." Only a short distance from the king's palace at Mycenae was the town of Nemean. Armed with bow and arrows and a heavy club, Heracles went to the lion's lair. When the lion saw Heracles, it leaped upon him. Heracles wounded it but could not kill it. At last he strangled it to death. The skin made him a fine cloak, which he wore on most of his other adventures. Heracles returned to Eurystheus, who was surprised to see him. "Very well," he said. "Your next labour will be to kill the hydra of Lerna, the dreadful water snake." Knowing the dangers of this task, Heracles took with him his brave young nephew, Iolaus. Together they went south to the great swamp of Lerna. Heracles knew that even the breath of the hydra was deadly poison. In great fear they searched the swamp. Then with a terrible hissing, the hydra arose from the water. Heracles was appalled. Huge snake heads swayed above its coiled body. Drawing his sword, he struck one head off, but 2 more grew in its place. Then Iolaus had a plan. He made a great torch with blazing wood. Each time a head was cut off, Iolaus burnt up the neck with his torch. At last the hydra was dead, and Heracles had a clever idea. Before he returned to Eurystheus, he dipped his arrows in the hydra's poisonous blood. They might prove useful later. The king now sent Heracles to catch the sacred deer of Artemis. This beautiful animal had horns of gold. It was very timid, and Heracles had to chase it for a whole year before at last he led it back to his master. On Mount Erymanthus in southern Greece there was a huge wild boar, which Heracles had to bring to Eurystheus. After a fierce struggle, Heracles returned to the palace, holding the wild boar alive over his head. The frightened king hid in a huge jar until Heracles took the boar away. The king angrily sent Heracles to help his friend Augean, who had a huge herd of cattle. He was a bad farmer and never cleaned out his stables, which were piled high with dung. Heracles was told to clean them. The hero was very clever. He diverted the water of a nearby river so that it flowed through the stables and washed them out. So without difficulty Heracles finished his 5th labour. Eurystheus was angry that he was completing his task so easily. "Go to Lake Stymphalian," he said, "and destroy the evil birds that haunt it." Heracles, armed with his bow, set off and found the lake. He knew that a flock of birds lived in the reeds beside the lake, birds with iron beaks and claws. These birds sometimes attacked lonely travellers and tore them to pieces. Heracles watched, but could see no sign of them anywhere. At last he became impatient. He made a great rattle from strips of wood and shook it in his fist. The sound echoed loudly around the mountain lake, and the birds flew screeching into the air in their hundreds. Heracles now took his bow and shot arrow after arrow into the sky. All day he went on firing, an unending stream of arrows. The birds were all killed instantly, for the arrows were tipped with the hydra's blood. End of part 1.